I'm still in between bench work for clients that I do, so I can take a look at the radio portion of the Eveready radio. I'm going to recap it and replace one open resistor that I found. So I'm just going to about ready to start proceeding with that. Here are the parts I plan to put in here. Here's 2.5s, and they are going to replace these 2.5 capacitors. This one was a little bit confusing because this one is not a grounding cap, this one is. So you got one terminal here and then you got the case grounded. Here the case is grounded, but there's two terminals underneath, not one but two. But the other terminal is clearly grounded, so I'm assuming this was built as an isolated 0.5 capacitor, but the tabs, were put in there so that the capacitor could be mounted, but the capacitor itself would not be grounded. At least that's the way I'm seeing it. Now the other thing is, here's a a 1 mic. This one replaces this big can here. Here's a 2.2. This replaces this big can here. And here's a 150 ohm 10 watt resistor. Now this is very confusing. This resistor is open. This big 10 watt ceramic resistor. It's in series with this rheostat and a few other resistors from B plus to ground, but you can see that this rheostat here is that's not a 10 watt. At least I don't see it as that. And these other resistors that are in series with it are smaller. So I don't understand the reason for this having to be such a big resistor, but I'm going to put one in anyways. Here is a 10 watt 150 ohm. I actually think this is supposed to be 175. I'm not really sure. But I'll be putting these parts in and then we'll go on from there. Here's something very interesting to point out. This is the audio detector, the detector stage of the radio. This is the stage before it's actually fed into the amplifier itself. This tube. And look at this glob of solder right here. That solder is literally shorting these 3 pins. It's literally shorting those. So someone worked on this radio was very, very careless with their soldering iron. I would like to have seen what kind of a soldering iron they were using in the day, but that big glob of solder there has got to come out, and it's actually fused to the pins, so that this radio would have never worked. And after this happened, and like I say, these 3 pins, they're soldered together technically. There's one big dead short right there. So I got to get that out of there. Here's what I accomplished so far. This capacitor here replaces this one here. And it's the cathode bypass to ground on the 3 RF tubes, the radio tubes. So I had to rewire it. The cathodes are all jumpered together, and then this capacitor is grounded from the 3rd terminal, 1, 2, 3 tubes. And then plus also the wiper of the what I'm thinking is the phonograph gain pot is also connected to that same circuit. That's how it is on the schematic anyways, and that's how it was in here. So far I've just bypassed this old capacitor with this new one here and did some rewiring. Well, I have to reconfigure my design of circuit changes here. Here's something very interesting. This is an original, this cap right here. That's an original. It's riveted in. This one is not. This one, you can see where someone drilled out that rivet but didn't complete this one. And by the way, these cans have coils in them. So whatever drilling they did, undoubtedly debris would fall down inside these cans. It'll be amazing if I can actually make this radio work. But anyways, I pulled this thing out. This is not an original. Somebody put it in at a later time, and I'm going to have to somehow put a terminal strip of some sort in here. So that's my next phase of the operation. So here's what I've accomplished so far. I soldered in this terminal strip, and my 2.5 bypass capacitors are soldered in from ground to where they're supposed to go. I took that bogus cap that some other tech attempted to put in. He partially drilled it out, and like I say, those rivets I think also went through these cans, so hopefully the work he did didn't damage anything. I'm not going to pull these covers off if I can avoid it. We'll see how this thing plays once they get done, you know, if it plays at all. But this is as far as I've gotten at this juncture, is to get these two caps in. These are thoroughly soldered to the chassis, and I've verified. Before I'm done, I'll verify that my grounds follow all the way through, that I've got zero resistance on all grounds. On an old radio like this, that's something you need to do. So here's what I've done under the chassis so far. I've added this terminal strip and soldered it very solidly to the chassis. I've replaced a 2.5 capacitor. This can, of course, was not original. I took it out. This one's original and riveted in, but it's just not attached anymore. But the 2.5 one is right here, the other is right here. So that's what I've done down here. Now up here, I replaced this 2 mic capacitor with this 2.2 mic capacitor. And you can't see it real well, but underneath here is a 1 mic capacitor that replaces this one here in the circuit. I've also replaced this open resistor. This was originally, I think it's supposed to be 175 ohms, but I could only get 150 ohms. But a lot of these resistors are not really close to the value they're supposed to be. So the only thing I can do is just to see how well the radio plays the way it is. This resistor may appear like it's just kind of hanging out in a space, but it's held in, it's soldered to the chassis, and then this end, of course, is soldered to what came off of the old ceramic tubular resistor that was in there, that was open. So for now, and I removed the glob of solder that was shorting out the pins of this tube. Wonder when that was done. I wonder if they ever tried to play this radio after that glob of solder got plopped in there. I know this was worked on by another tech, and I think probably many years ago. So at this point, I'm pretty much done with what I'm planning to do underneath the chassis, and now I'm going to check the tubes out. Okay, so I think I'm about ready to reconnect here and put an antenna and ground on this radio and a speaker and test it, see if it works. I've done all that I thought that needed to be done in the chassis of the RF section. The power supply I know is working. I've already tested that, as you saw in the last video. These tubes are 71As. I pulled them out of another radio I had that was basically a junk radio at this point, but these are 71As. There was, if you'll remember right, there were 26s in the amplifier section of this radio. I'm not sure if 26 is an appropriate substitute, but I'm going to try these 71As. The problem is I don't have a tube tester that'll test these old tubes. I'm going to have to get one. So I have no idea what quality of these of tubes I have here. The only way I'm going to know how those tubes work is if this radio plays or not. If it doesn't play, well, then I'll have to move on from there. But I'm going to need to find a tube tester that tests these very old tubes. That's something I've been needing, and maybe I better look into doing that. Okay, I'm going to do a power-up test. We'll see if this thing either smokes, does absolutely nothing, or if I get sound out of it. We'll find out. So here we go. Well, our pilot light's lit. Our B plus voltage is climbing rather slowly. Oops. I saw a flash in the 80 tube. I wonder why that is. I wonder if we still have a short somewhere. Maybe I haven't found. Let's try it one more time. This time I'll monitor current. We're getting no B plus voltage out. Maybe I blew the rectifier tube. We'll see. The other tubes are lighting, at least I think they are. However, I think it might have blew the number the 80. So even though I fixed that one short, something is definitely shorted. So maybe it's a short in the transformer I haven't found. So I have to find that. Okay, well at this point I'm kind of stopped on this project, unfortunately. It appears that there's a short, very possibly, in the audio transformer, because when I put the audio tubes in, it draws a lot of current, and the tubes themselves, I'm very certain are not shorted. You know, if I power this thing up and charge up the capacitors and then take the power off and then just plug these tubes in, there's no current draw. That's not a short in the tubes. It's something to do with the transformers as the power is going up, and when those tubes are actually conducting, there's something wrong. There's definitely something, probably I missed a short in one of the audio. There's an input audio transformer, and then there's the output audio transformer. I'll try to check those out as good as I can, but I have a feeling that at this stage of the game, I think I'm biting it. I'm biting the bullet on this one.